In Florida this evening, emotions poured out as more than 1,000 people gathered for a vigil to remember the victims of the Parkland school shooting.
Carmen Centro, Meadow Pollock, Peter Wang.
The names of the 17 victims were read aloud tonight. One of the most emotional moments came when the father of murder victim Jamie Gutenberg spoke about losing his daughter.
She was supposed to be safe. My job is to protect my children, and I sent my kid to school.
Some mourners in the massive crowd held signs asking for action to fight gun violence. At one point, the crowd started shouting, "No more guns." The sheriff of Broward County, where the shooting happened, also had a strong message for elected leaders.
If you want to keep the gun laws as they are now, you will not get re-elected in Broward County.
In a time of unthinkable grief, there was also a plea for people to carry out acts of kindness. The student body president said the community will not be intimidated by evil. We're waiting to learn when President Trump will visit Parkland. He's scheduled to fly to his private club in Palm Beach, Florida this weekend, and said he plans to visit the Parkland community, but no official timeline has been released just yet. And Morgan, investigators released more details about the suspect.
Mary, they have. Right now, the 19-year-old's being held in jail on suicide watch after police say he did confess to that deadly rampage. He now faces 17 counts of premeditated murder. Investigators say the teen took an Uber to his former high school yesterday, where he fired into 5 classrooms on the first 2 floors, then went up to the 3rd floor, dropped that semi-automatic rifle before making his escape by blending in with other students fleeing the gunfire. He then went to a nearby Walmart, stopped at a Subway, and walked to a McDonald's. Police arrested the suspect about 40 minutes later. Authorities say the teen bought that AR-15 rifle legally, and in Florida, just like Washington, you only have to be 18 to buy a semi-automatic gun, such as these, and 21 years old to buy a handgun. Today, Florida Governor Rick Scott said all options are on the table when it comes to keeping students safe.
It's looking at, who should have guns? Should individuals with mental illness have guns? What can we do to create more safety in our schools?
In our state, a bill to raise the legal age to buy a semi-automatic weapon likely won't make it to a vote this session, but another gun control measure is moving forward. A bill to ban bump stocks passed a critical House committee vote today and now goes to the full House. It already cleared the Senate. Those devices, like the ones used in the Las Vegas mass shooting, make semi-automatic weapons fire even faster. And that brings us to tonight's poll question. We want to know what action, if any, should lawmakers take concerning semi-automatic weapons. Should the legal age to buy one be raised to 21? Should they be banned, or should no changes be made? You can vote by clicking on this story at comonews.com. We'll have those results coming up at the end of this newscast. And here are the results of our poll question tonight. We ask, what action, if any, should lawmakers take concerning semi-automatic weapons? 17% of you said the legal buying age should be raised from 18 to 21. 54% say they should be banned. 30% said no changes should be made.
But first, we are learning new information tonight about a shooting in Florida where a young man is accused of killing 17 people. Good evening. I'm David Rose.
And I'm Marnie Hughes. Tonight, we are remembering those 17 victims who were senselessly killed yesterday afternoon.
Home is where the heart is, and yesterday, my heart was broken.
So tonight, hundreds of people attended a vigil to remember the victims, emotions running high as the crowd learned the names of all 17 people who were killed. Among them were kids like Martin Duque, Alania Petty, Luke Hoyer, and Jamie Gutenberg. Their friends and family are now looking for some sort of reason to blame on this unimaginable tragedy.
She was supposed to be safe. My job is to protect my children, and I sent my kid to school. In the morning, sometimes things get so crazy, she runs out behind and she's like, I gotta go, Dad, bye. And I don't always get to say, I love you. I don't remember if I said that to Jamie yesterday morning.
So you just feel for that father and all of the other parents. He was talking about the last moments he had with his daughter. So we're going to continue to hear the stories of the victims as the days go by.
But there are still so many questions surrounding who the accused shooter was and what could have been done to prevent this. Just 24 hours after the deadliest school shooting since Newtown, the alleged shooter, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, appeared in court, facing 17 counts of premeditated murder.
He's a broken human being. He's a broken child.
Beloved staff and young students are among the dead in what had been Florida's safest city.
We had an athletic director, campus monitor, who responded immediately when there were signs of trouble in the school. Unfortunately, those two heroes gave their lives for our kids.
Assistant football coach Aaron Feast reportedly threw himself in front of kids to block them from bullets, saving countless lives but losing his own. Many who escaped are trying to cope with what they saw.
I've heard a young man crying for his mother dying.
And the shocking loss of those they will never see again.
I thought at the beginning that this was it was all a drill. It was just a drill until I saw my teacher dead on the floor.
Social media posts under Cruz's name indicate violent, racist views, including slurs and threats of murder. One message reads, "I want to shoot people with my AR-15. When the suspected shooter's adopted mother passed away in November, the family of a former classmate took him into their home. He brought his AR-15 style rifle with him.
It was his lockbox and his gun in his room. And these folks are horrified. They did not see this coming at all from this young man. They saw some depression. Obviously, he'd lost his mom. But they helped him get a job at a Dollar Tree store.
His former manager at the Dollar Tree says he tried to help the alleged killer after his mother passed away.
You could tell he was a little off, but there's people that are off that you wouldn't say, let's lock him away because he's that dangerous. But for him, it's just all that more scary to think that I worked with him. I couldn't have done anything else but, hey, you want to play basketball sometime? That's just scary to think that it could have happened at work. It could have happened anywhere.
Well, after mass shootings, it's common to hear from gun control advocates seeking stricter gun laws. It's not every day, though, that you hear from a gun shop owner.
But one Bellevue man is sticking his neck out to say changes need to be made. And Hannah Kim takes us to his Bellevue store to hear from the owner, who says he has some common sense solutions.
You got to pick up? Yeah, a couple. Okay, what you got?
Jason Kaz has been selling guns at lowpriceguns.com for the past 15 years.
We have 45s, 40s, and revolvers over here.
He's always been quick to fight off gun control. But the 17 deaths that happened at this Parkland, Florida high school yesterday is forcing him to reevaluate his beliefs.
Kids, the senselessness of it, the evil, it's in this world.
A world now where he worries about sending his 7-year-old daughter to school.
This morning I woke up with this on my heart and I had the answers.
For the first time ever, this gun shop owner wants gun rules to change.
This is an AR-15, similar to what was used in the Parkland, Florida shooting. Here in Washington State, you only have to be 18 years old to buy a gun like this. But for handguns, it's a different story. You have to be 21 years old.
It makes sense to me to go ahead and bump it to 21, just like handguns.
That's because Jason says the Florida shooter was 19 years old. And he also points to Alan Ivanoff, also 19 at the time, when the Mukilteo teenager shot and killed 3 high school students in a jealous rage.
They're not emotionally mature enough to handle it, okay? They need to be 21 to get an AR-15, I'm sorry.
Jason also says the background check to get a handgun is more rigorous than to purchase a long gun. For a handgun, you have to fill out these 2 forms, an FBI check and a state background check. But long guns, you only need to pass the FBI check.
What the state does is they go and further check state records, which are looking for mental illness and possibly connecting dots with domestic violence that didn't show up with the federal database yet.
It's an idea that Jason knows he will get a lot of pushback on from his own side.
We got to go, hey, there's give and take here. I'm willing to do a little more work and sell a little less guns to protect my own Second Amendment rights.
Because the last thing he ever wants is a gun ban.
Banning, like the AR-15 was done 10 years ago, it did not bring down violent crime if you look at stats. It doesn't work. Take them all away, guess what? They're not all away. And then you take mine away, criminals will have them.
In Bellevue, Hannah Kim, Q13 News.
There is a bill in Olympia now similar to what Jason is suggesting, but insiders tell us it does not have the support to pass this year. Jason, again, is a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. He is hoping his message will help sway some people's minds. Now, one thing that could happen in Washington this year is a bump stock ban. Those are devices that can be attached to guns to make them fire faster. The Las Vegas shooter used them to fire a legal semi-automatic rifle, more like a fully automatic one. And we want to show you the difference here for yourself.
This is the bump stock.
The bill to ban bump stocks has already passed the Senate. Today we learned it will go to a vote in the House. And if it passes there, Governor Inslee says he will sign it into law.
First at 10. We want to remember the 17 lives cut short. Jamie Gutenberg, a hopeful teenage girl. Nicholas Dworet, a college-bound swimmer. Aaron Feiss, a beloved coach. Luke Hoyer, the basketball fan. Peter Wang, the teen who held the door so others could escape. Chris Hickson, an accomplished athletic director. Scott Beagle, social studies teacher. Samantha Grady pushed her best friend out of the way to save her life.
The community came together tonight for a vigil for the lives lost in yesterday's school shooting. The shooter killed 17 people at the school in Parkland, Florida. Hundreds of people went to tonight's vigil. Some who went dressed in the school's colors. Others held signs requesting action to stop school violence and to push for gun control as well.
For the first time, we are hearing the call an Everett grandmother made to police to report her grandson had possible plans to commit a mass shooting at a school. Now, the grandmother intended to call the non-emergency line, but she reached 911 instead. Take a listen.
What I'm reporting is I'm finding journal entries from my grandson, and he's planning to have a mass shooting at one of the high schools. And I wanted to talk to somebody about that.
New tonight, we have learned her grandson is also accused of committing a robbery with another person at an AM/PM store on Monday. Police were able to make that connection after finding masks used in the robbery in his room when they searched it. Well, the tragedy in Florida this week has renewed debate over gun control from Washington, D.C. to Washington state. State lawmakers have been considering several different pieces of gun safety legislation this session.
Our very own Natalie Brand joins us with information on a bill that would have increased the background check process for assault weapons. Natalie?
But at this point, it does appear stalled, and that's because last night was a cutoff deadline for certain bills. And while several gun-related bills are moving forward in the legislative process, a key push by gun safety advocates in this state recently has been enhanced assault weapons background checks. That bill has not moved forward despite Democratic control of the state legislature this year.
We need lawmakers to be as courageous as those poor children were in the school yesterday.
Renee Hopkins, CEO of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, tracks the tragedies around gun violence every day.
While there's a lot of attention on days when these horrific instances happen, like did in Florida and almost did here in Washington, I think it's important to remember that for people in our work, this is just what it is in our country right now.
Hopkins Group has a clear legislative agenda this year, and while proposals such as a bump stock ban appear to be moving forward in the state legislature, a separate bill that would enhance assault weapon background checks appears stalled. The legislation would increase the age of purchasing an assault weapon to 21 years old and also require safety training and an annual background check renewal, putting standards on par with what's required for a concealed carry permit. While the legislation missed a key deadline Wednesday night.
Well, we expect lawmakers to do everything that they can to revive the enhanced background check on assault weapons. I think, again, this issue is not a partisan issue for people in our state, and our legislators need to quit acting as if it is.
Gun control is a real politically toxic subject, and there are some Democrats in Olympia who are in rural districts whose constituents are very pro-gun.
Dave Workman writes for the Second Amendment Foundation's Gun Magazine.
I think we're all looking for an easy answer, and there's no easy answer to the kind of violence that we wind up reporting about all too frequently.
Staunch supporters of the Second Amendment believe the emphasis should be placed on mental health services, not gun control.
Frankly, if somebody's determined to commit just a heinous act, they're going to find a way to do that.
But groups like the Alliance for Gun Responsibility say data shows tweaks to the law can save lives, and they're turning to state legislatures amid continued gridlock in Washington, D.C.
What we're talking about are people in crisis, and in a moment of crisis, having legal access to firearms is something that we have the ability to legislate around, and we should.
And Renee Hopkins points to the Extreme Risk Protection Order ballot initiative that was passed by voters in 2016. You may recall that's the measure that allows families or law enforcement to ask a judge to temporarily block a person's access to firearms if there's evidence the individual is threatening harm to themselves or others. Hopkins believes that policy could have potentially made a difference in Florida.
Right. Yeah, it sure sounds like it could have. Natalie, thank you.
The big question after any of these shootings is this: how do we stop this from happening again? Today we sat down with the state's top educator to speak about what we can do to keep our children safe and our schools safe.
We have mental health needs of kids who are still getting access to deadly firearms. We have to ask ourselves and look in the mirror and say, what can I do in my community, in my home today to reduce risk?
State Superintendent of Education Chris Reichdahl also says his office is working on a student-to-student, peer-to-peer system where a student can report something that they see that alarms them on social media anonymously. As more information comes out, of course, we're going to bring you more information on air and online as well.